Welcome everyone, bienvenidos a todos a un nuevo webinar de Sudamerica Coaching, esta vez con traducción simultánea al español. Para activar esa opción, vayan a sus opciones en intérprete y ya la van a estar escuchando Andrea. Voy a cambiar nuevamente a inglés. Welcome all, welcome to another Sudamerica Coaching webinar. We've got our guest over there on his first ever live Instagram. Fletcher, how are we, mate? Good to have you here.
Yeah, I'm all good. Thank you. Thanks very much for the invite, Juan. Excited. I'm looking forward to eventually found Instagram. Well done.
You are on Instagram. We are live on Instagram. There's a number of people watching already. How are you all? Thanks for joining. We are going to try to speak as slow as possible to make Andrea's life a lot easier. If you are listening to the translation, just give us a thumbs up. First time we're using this new function on Zoom. So Chupete there in Argentina is listening to us. Fantastic. There's lots of people there joining in. Fletch, how are you, mate? It's great to have you.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for everybody taking the time. So looking forward to it.
Well, we are on 120 people here in Zoom, and I'm sure there'll be lots more joining, quite a few on Instagram as well. Do you feel really famous having two cameras on you, Fletch?
Yeah, mate, it's freaking me out.
Fletch, why don't we crack on, mate? People keep joining in. It'd be great if you could introduce yourself. You got 37 seconds to tell us your whole story. Off you go.
John Fletcher, married to my wife Christine, 3 boys and a dog. Been involved with rugby for lots of years. Was an okay player. I was fortunate enough to get into coaching quite early. Went to Newcastle Falcons, ran their academy, and then I was director of rugby at Newcastle Falcons. Worked for the RFU in the performance program. Ran the start of that for over 10 years, and last couple of years been hanging out with Russell Earnshaw, the Magic Stig, in the Magic Academy, and having great fun.
Mate, 38 seconds. You went over for 1 second, but we let you off.
Press ups.
Mate, I'm going to share the screen for you to crack on. The format that I'm going to try to have is I'll try to challenge Fletch as much as possible in the next 20 minutes or so. We're going to use the chat as well if you want to send some questions as we go along. It'd be great to have you on board. I'm just going to sort out my screen really quickly. And then hopefully loads of people will be able to get some questions on board. I'm struggling here. 1 second. I've lost my chat. There it is. Too many people on the call, Fletch. You're very famous. Here we go, Fletch. Over to you.
Okay. Well, guys, again, thanks for the opportunity, Juan. These are my thoughts around developing leaders in sport. My eyes would look through the lens of rugby. However, this, in my view, would apply to pretty much any environment, anywhere where there's a team. I think the starting point would be, from my point of view, is to probably define what leadership is. So in my head, if we're having some conversations around developing leaders, then actually what is the big rocks or the principles around that? So this is what I think leadership is. So leadership to me is around inspiration. So I'd expect leaders to inspire. I'd expect them to grow people around them. Influence would be a key skill of a good leader. And then winning is around being able to give the direction of travel or a vision or about what winning is, but also to understand how to win. So to be really tactical as well. So not only to give that vision, but to be able to navigate the tactics that's going to be involved around winning, whatever winning is. So winning might be to win the league. Winning might be to have the biggest crowd base. Winning might be to retain lots of people in your environment. So whatever winning is. So they would be the main principles around leadership, in my view. These would be the skills that I would be looking to develop in people. So Juan, do you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, mate.
So the reason I put this one up is clearly leadership has many faces. What I hear a lot around people developing leaders is they tend to reference the more extroverted leader. So the one that probably talks the most, shouts the loudest, is really inspirational around not only their verbal, but their non-verbal communication. However, leadership can have lots of faces. It would be dependent on the context. Probably the strongest leader I ever had as a player would be quite introverted, would be quite quiet. However, did definitely demonstrate the principles that I spoke about on the first slide. So really good at influence people, very inspirational, just not that noisy, but inspirational in lots of ways around their actions spoke a lot louder than their words. Give us real clarity on the direction that we were headed. So the reason I've demonstrated this is just be mindful that leadership will manifest itself in lots of different ways. It will show up in lots of different ways. It's definitely driven largely around the context. Sometimes I've noticed leaders who are quite vocal and are very good at giving Churchillian types speeches, actually, when that's probably not needed, then maybe not as skillful in other aspects of leadership. So there's a really interesting article, Paul O'Connell. Lots of people would reference his leadership, and one thing they would talk a lot about his leadership was the fact that he was very aware of what was needed, either for that person or in that moment in time. So yeah, leadership has many faces. Also, something else I've noticed about leadership is often we like leaders who would lead like us. So I've also noticed, especially in sport, that people are very, they'd be quite attached to people who are quite similar to them around their leadership preference. So if their preference is this and it matches your preference, then you would probably think that was good leadership. Leadership can definitely, everybody has the ability to lead, and just be mindful that you actually may be missing opportunities with people who are in your squad who you might not be currently given opportunities around, or having opportunities to lead, and they might be some of your best leaders. Mate, if we go to the next slide, please.
Quick question on this one, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
There'll be lots of coaches on this call that will actually be wondering how to choose their captains. Have you had a magic recipe that you could pass on?
It would be certainly in my last job, where we were running the performance program for England Rugby. We would give the opportunity to the players who we felt as though were most likely to go through the pathway.
Mm-hmm.
So those players most likely to play for England, we would afford them some different opportunities to other players. However, if I was in a club, I would definitely include the other players. So I think not necessarily to vote, but definitely have them as part of the process around selecting the leader. And I'd probably get the club or the team to identify what are the skills and the behaviors we're looking for in ultimately our leader. So ultimately, what are the skills we're looking for? Get everybody's views and opinions and thoughts around that. And then I would be picking a leadership. And it wouldn't just be one person. I'm a big fan around co-captains, giving lots of different people different opportunities. I think it's helpful. I think the days of having one captain, one leader are long gone, really. I don't think it's that helpful. So yeah, I would give lots of people some opportunities around that.
Fantastic. Do you want to move on to the next one?
Yes, please. Thank you. Good question, Juan. This is around, and we've touched a little bit on there, just around clearly what we would need to do around development leadership is just make people aware of what they're currently doing really well and actually what's the stuff that's missing. So the empty seat there, stole that from Rusty. It's around what stuff's missing around your leadership skills. There's lots of methods and ways of doing it. You can get people in, there's insights, alumni spotlight. There's a lot of companies, organizations that will actually give you some real awareness around what stuff you're currently good at and what stuff you're not so good at around your leadership. And it's not only leadership, it's around just general self-awareness. So good leaders, in my view, my experience, would have real good awareness of themselves and others and context. So good self-awareness, good awareness of others, and good awareness of context. That's what I've noticed. And I think a starting point for that is to get some feedback and what that actually looks like. So the stuff you're doing well, your stuff you could do better. That I think would be really, really useful. And then clearly from then you would have something, or you would have some information to sort of, well, actually, I'm going to make my strengths even stronger, or actually, I probably need to work on my communication around dealing with this situation, or these, or people who have these preferences. I would probably try and move away from sort of language around this is my leadership styles. I think we're all capable of actually delivering leadership in lots of different ways. But I do think having a good awareness is a really good place, and I'd be working really hard with any team I was involved with around building that awareness. What are people most likely to do under pressure around communication, leadership, how they're likely to turn up in a team situation under pressure, etc., etc. That would be good information.
Fantastic, mate.
Is that okay? This is obviously just around environment. So just being intentional around trying to create an environment that's going to give people opportunities. And I do think that's key, especially when the players are younger, but even as they get into their senior environments. Often I hear this person's not a good leader. They don't demonstrate leadership skills. To me, I would replace that with yet. So then they're not maybe a good leader yet. I'd probably look at why. So where does this behavior come from? Often it comes from they just haven't been given enough opportunities. So, because people are pretty early to judge around what leadership is and who's good at leading. And then we sometimes forget to give people some opportunities. Often what I hear from coaches is surprise. So when they've given people some opportunities, then they're often quite surprised with how well it's gone. They just hadn't afforded them opportunities in the past. So clearly environments, so there's some pictures around here around trying to create environments where people can obviously and I'm going to talk about it later on around peer feedback. So they're getting some information off their peers, which is really important to them, especially around teenage years, but also getting some experiences and some support from people who have a bit more experience around leadership. And again, I'm going to talk about that later on, so I don't want to dwell too much about that. But the key is just to try and create an environment where people are given opportunities to lead. And then with the opportunity, they're actually given some form of feedback. There's some quite structured feedback. So, so we can start to build their awareness around how things are going. I've got a question of Nick Twiggs. I'm always curious around
come
that.
On.
I can't read it. I haven't got my right glasses on.
I'll tell you what. I'll get Nick to join the call. If I can open his mic. Nick, mate, how are you doing? You okay? Where are you? And what's your question?
Good, thanks, mate. I'm still locked down in the Lake District, which is pretty cool. My question is that at a junior level, there's like an assumed equality between the best player and the best leader. You know, the best kid always gets picked as the captain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we acknowledge that players develop at different rates physically, and I wonder, and you were kind of just touching on that last slide, Fletch, you know, how can we better support those players who develop leadership capabilities at different rates? And I don't often see environments where, you know, we give a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old opportunities at leadership. You know, the die's been cast. You know, the kid who's like the team captain at under 12s is generally still the team captain at sort of, you know, under 18s, because he's the one who's had the opportunity to develop his leadership. So I wonder how we can do better around that.
Yeah, you're right, man. It's something that I've noticed as well. I think it's a great spot. Often the best players are given those opportunities. Now, I referenced it before within the performance pathway, that was actually deliberate, because that was part of our job, was to, however, other people were given lots of opportunities as well. I mean, I just wouldn't see leadership as a one-person opportunity. So, you know, give multiple opportunities, even during match day or training. Keep on swapping those around. Keep on giving feedback. I think it would be helpful to support the players around personality preferences. So to actually make people aware that people do have some preferences. So is your preference around introversion or extroversion? Do you have a preference around thinking or feeling? Do you have a preference around sensation or intuition? So there'll be lots of information that you could actually support the players with. So it doesn't feel so sticky for somebody who's probably a little bit introverted, who's going to lead in a different way. Because it can turn into a car crash when you don't give them that support or don't give them that feedback. I do think it would be useful to, again, probably work, is to probably work and understand what leadership is. So actually, as a team, as a group, have you identified what leadership means to you guys? Because I do think that would be useful.
Cool. Thanks, Nick,
Does that
for the
answer your question?
Hold on. Nick is gone. He's back now.
Yeah, definitely, Fletch. I think, the thing about sort of personality types, I think it's quite important, and especially between sort of introvert and extrovert. You know, if you're talking about teenagers, you know, that sort of the peer sort of relationships, and trying to get introverts to behave in like a conventional extrovert leader type role, you know, is obviously going to be pretty challenging for that individual. So yeah, I like that. Thanks, Fletch.
Yeah, mate. And it is. I think it's almost a sigh of relief, or the light bulb moment goes on when they have an awareness that everybody has some preferences. So we all have preferences. It doesn't mean we don't have the skills or we can't behave in a certain way. It's just that actually our preference is to behave in this way. But again, I think, and it's back to my original point, I think generally out there, if you were to write down the characteristics of a leader, they would be that of an extroverted person. And I don't think it's helpful. As I said, the best leader I ever had was really introverted, didn't speak that much, but had a lot of the qualities around influencing and inspiring, mainly through actions, give real good clarity. You know, there's lots of the leadership skills that I feel as, or we felt as important at the time. This person was demonstrating in abundance. So
Right.
Environment's really important. So what is your environment? How are you as grown-ups and adults behaving to bring out the best in your team or in the people from this, with a lens around developing their leadership skills? So be really, really intentional around the stuff that's important. This one, is it worth mentioning the place of people? Would they have seen that anyway, or?
I think it's worthwhile if we try to go through. Maybe Andrea can make a good job of trying to translate that. Let's just give her 30 seconds or so.
Okay. Should I go now, mate?
I'm going to combine two questions, Fletch, if you don't mind.
Okay.
One is from Alejandro all the way in Argentina, and the other one is from Aitor in Spain. So Alejandro is asking about this. So have we been born into leadership? Does it come within our DNA? Or do we develop that with the years? And Aitor, on the back of that, he's asking about sort of when do you start giving out these roles in terms of age groups, and what sort of roles within leadership would you give out?
Okay. I think you start giving them out straight away. So when they first start doing some activities, it's what you would do as a parent. You would give your child some responsibility, some opportunity to demonstrate some behavior and to demonstrate some or practice some skills. So I would be doing it straight away. I think Nick alluded to it. I think you should be sharing those opportunities out. The key is around feedback as well. So the key is around checking in with the players who have been, maybe they were sort of captain of the attack or leading on the set piece, or they were doing something around the game. Actually, can you give them some feedback? What stuff did they do well? Why was it good? So, you know, and then how could it be better next time? What sort of stuff collectively are you thinking? And it's not just about you giving, it's about trying to draw that information out of them, probably and definitely out of their peers. But as soon as they can start moving around and they're catching the ball, give them opportunities to lead. They should be taking some responsibility around that. I think it's almost, it's very trainable and coachable. It's very environmentally led. So those people who are probably demonstrating some good leadership is that they would have had some more opportunities. So whether schools afforded them that, they've actually learned some stuff off parents, or they've observed some stuff. But everybody's a leader. Everybody has to take some responsibility in terms of leading themselves. I think what I'm saying is give everybody some responsibility around leading others. But just be mindful, it doesn't necessarily need to look what you think it looks like.
Cool. Thanks for your questions. Please do keep sending them in any language. Should we move on to the next one, Fletch?
Yes, please.
Foxy.
So Foxy's on the top right. So this is, again, it's around making it individual. So once you have an awareness around the preferences, so how they're likely to behave, and you've got some, well, they're pretty good at that, they're not so good at this, we're working around some feedback, then you've got to start making it really individual around the interactions and the interventions. So as you look on the screen, the top left is 4 development plans on there. There's some examples of them looking to develop not only their rugby skills, technical, but also some of their psychological skills within that would be the leadership stuff. Foxy, so that the person with the target t-shirt, so he is a scrum half, so naturally he's got some responsibility around leading. Often he's packed of forwards, working with the rest of the team. He was co-captain a couple of times, so had some responsibility in addition to his function as a 9. The reason we put a target top on him is because if you put him under a bit of pressure and you got into him a bit, sometimes he let himself down around his behavior. So actually, what are the individual challenges and the constraints you're going to add to on and off the field? So there's lots of things that we can do around developing in this case, their leadership skills. The one on the bottom left, Tom Seabrook, although that's very much around on pitch stuff, it's around, can you use your analyst, or can you actually start to measure some stuff? So again, if influencing, as an example, is a really important leadership skill, then maybe just start to notice how many times Foxy's actually influenced people. How did he influence people? When did he inspire somebody? So the stuff that you think is important around leadership, actually, how can you measure it? How can you notice it? How can you give that feedback? And then the bottom right is around some challenge cards. It's just another way around setting challenges for individuals or groups. I'd be really intentional. Oh, well done. You can buy them in Spanish. Juan's got them sorted out. So I think they're really good around not just developing leadership, but developing lots of skills and behaviors is around setting challenges. Because the key to a challenge is that it's then going to give opportunity around sort of feedback and replay and reflection type stuff. You're going to have some really strong not only conversations, but then actually what's it going to be like next time. So yeah, a real big one around making individual. You wouldn't support, in my case, Martin Johnson, how you would support Johnny Wilkinson around leadership. They're very different. They would have different needs and wants. However, I don't actually think we're doing that much about it, if I'm honest. I think Nick's absolutely right. It's often given to the best player. The coaches, in my opinion, the coach has taken loads and loads of opportunities away from people to lead because of how we coach. So I would be thinking about, I think it's really important. Actually, the last slide, I maybe should have moved up, but we'll talk about the last slide around, you know, how important leadership is in your program, in your team. Any questions around that, mate?
Yeah, I think there's a couple here. So I'm going to go to Fabricio. His mic doesn't work, so I'm going to read it out for you. He says, how can we support kids? How can we help children to try to recognize good leadership qualities?
I think there's lots of things you can do. You can get them to talk about who their favorite leader is, what were the characteristics that they liked about that person. Mm-hmm. So that's actually maybe a personal experience. Maybe they can talk about good leaders that they hear about. So, you know, so from a management point of view, you might talk about Eddie Jones or you know, Clive Woodward or Alex Ferguson, or there might be other ones. And then just have some conversations about why do you think they were good leaders? What sort of stuff did you see? What have you heard about? What have you read? I think that would be a useful exercise to do. And then again, maybe around your huddles or your debriefs or after games, just start to notice people demonstrating good leadership. And it doesn't, and again, we keep on talking about it, it's clearly don't just recognize the person that talks a lot. There's, you know, if leadership is about the things we spoke about right at the start, then yeah, you know, just notice that. So if you're seeing somebody who's developing somebody else who's really supportive around another player, that's outstanding leadership. You should notice it. You should reference it. You should mention it. That's how I think we would develop leadership.
Cool, Fletcher. I'm going to bring in Ian Walker to the conversation. I think he's got an interesting question here in the chat. Ian, I can't see you, but I think we can hear you now, mate. You okay? Where are you? What's your question?
Hi, I'm in Banbury in the UK. My question was similar to Foxy's top, where you said actually it describes what his work on is. Do you run through cues with players for their mental work ons, so they almost recognise when they're starting to get to that point?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's a couple of things that we would do. One is we'd make them aware of how their brain's likely to react. So we would share some information around the brain sciencey stuff of that we know around what's happening to you. So basically what was happening with Foxy is he was having an emotional response, that fight, flight, freeze type emotion. So for him to have an awareness that this is absolutely normal, that it happens to everybody. So to recognize when this is happening and then to have some strategies around it, you're absolutely right. And clearly what we were trying to do in training was to magnify that. So we were basically agitating him. He's wearing a target t-shirt, so if anybody could get a good shot on him or put him on the floor or just rough him up. We would also then referee the game poorly, stuff that he would react quite poorly to how he would see stuff that was unjust. So we would then play it out with them as well, and then we would then just go through it. Either at the moment, you know, how's he feeling? What sort of stuff are you thinking about? What sort of stuff's happening in your brain? What are you doing about it? So that's kind of how it works. I do think coaches would benefit from having a better understanding around just the normal stuff that's happening around our brain, the fight, flight, freezy type, amygdala hijack, the Steve Peters sort of chimp paradox stuff. I think it's helpful. I think it helps people, especially people like Foxy. So Foxy spent the first 16, 17 years of life thinking that all referees hated him and everything was unjust, and he got himself into a lot of trouble. And often was not he was not that effective. Or you could knock him off his game. Does that answer your question, Ian?
Hold on, I need to bring him back. Give us a thumbs up, Ian, or thumbs down. He's in the middle, so he needs to come back. Hold on. I'm trying to find him. There's loads of people here, and I can't find you, Ian. Bear with me. Ian, there you are. You're back, Ian. You're back.
Thank you. Fletcher, I'm going to put another one sort of follows on from what you said just before Juan added me in. And it's kind of mini and juniors coaches in reality, because most are volunteers, and the technical skill looks like rugby, or it looks like football, or it looks like football. But, you know, unless people have had the experience of, you know, whether it's in their day job or else of development or kind of sales mentality and things like that, it's quite abstract, a concept for people to try to overlay over the technical training part. And, you know, as you said, it is almost something that people need to spend extra time understanding. And do you think that, you know, clubs and unions could do more to support coach development in those areas?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I do. And I think it is, to be fair to the RFU, and I'm sure other unions are the same, they are quite intentional around the, let's call it the mental side, or the psychological side. I mean, there's 3 or 4 things I think are really simple. Just have some basic information around how the brain works. So the fight, flight, freeze, we kind of know. So people are going to react in a certain way when they're put under pressure. And it's completely normal. It's really helpful. So having an awareness, it'll be pretty easy to notice it in terms of who's actually behaving in certain ways under pressure, and then having some strategies to look to support that. In addition, I do actually think that leadership is something that I do think sport and coaching we could do better. Even if it was just to give more people some opportunities to actually have some leadership type roles, and then to be more skillful around giving them some feedback around it, you know. So if, and I'm not saying it is, but it's just my definition of leadership, influence, growing people, inspiring people, and understanding what the end goal is. If that's kind of what leadership is, well, actually, can we give more people opportunities, and can we give them some feedback around how they're doing? And to be fair, there'd be a couple of other things I would do. But yeah, I think you're right. I think coach education tends to focus around the technical, tactical, and we're missing some opportunities around the psychological stuff.
Fantastic. Fletch, this question that is now being asked about 5 times. So I'm going to bring Coty in from Argentina. And she's going to ask you that question that has been now asked 5 times. Coty, hola, how are you? What's your question for John? Coty, are you there? Yeah, I think she's having issues with her mic. So her question, Fletch, was around, and again, Matilde, Sergio, lots of people asking the same question. Would it be helpful to let different players take different responsibilities? in different areas. So Sergio was mentioning the social side of the game. Matilde was talking about different personalities. So having loads of bosses within the same team, taking on different aspects of the team. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you might not be able to give everybody an opportunity in every situation, but I think we need to be given a lot more and then just rotate it. You want to play to people's strengths a bit. So you want them to have some success, but you also want to stretch them as well. So actually maybe for the child who's finding it difficult to speak to his peers, maybe, you know, I do feel he needs that opportunity because that's a skill that's going to be important. So yes, is a really simple answer. We need to give more people. So an example, I took it was a 7-a-side squad. So we had a squad of 12. We paired them up. So often get people to work in pairs. We give some people some responsibility around the breakout. So breakdown, kickoffs, when we had the ball, when we didn't have the ball, communicating with the referee. So basically I paired them up. So they actually had some, so we were co-captains. So me and Juan would be co-captain around the breakdown. So we're actually leading around that, so we were given some responsibility around that. So yes, is a simple answer. We need to give more young people more opportunities, more responsibility around leadership. And then, however, we do need to support them. You can't just give them the opportunity and then not give them any feedback on it. I mean, just exactly how you would coach the pass. If somebody's finding the pass quite easy, and you'd probably look to stretch them. If you wanted them pass it in a different way, then you would add a constraint. We just need to do that around their mental skills, around their leadership skills.
Cool. Should we go on to learning one? My favorite one.
Yeah. Go on, mate, put it on. Yeah, so this is around, it's about setting up opportunities to sort of share learning. So the one on the top left is, that's actually my eldest son doing a little bit of cricket coaching, using some technology. They're much better around the peer-to-peer stuff. So for those who know cricket, so I do a bit of coaching. My son does a bit of coaching. He's a decent coach, to be fair. He's quite young himself. But all the young players think he's a far superior coach to me because of the age, because of the... And I would say I'm more skillful in the coaching. And I felt the sessions I actually delivered the coaching, my performance was stronger. Yet when I asked them, they all said that Ollie was their favourite and the best coach. The middle pictures around parents. So again, depending on the age, but who's influential. So actually, if you've got maybe some mentoring going on within your club, so can you get the under 18s to support your 14s? Can you get the first team guys to support your Colts? And again, be really intentional around leadership. So not only their skills around the game, but actually into the leadership as well. That's just one on the top right. It ties into a little bit around the environment. So understand the person around what's a good environment for them to learn in. The one on the bottom right is around definitely get people to be inspired. So maybe get your club captain down, or if you know anybody else who's had some amazing experiences, so that's Johnny Wilkinson sharing some information around his career and his views. And I can remember that day we did talk about leadership. What does he think it is? Which leaders were helpful for him? Which leaders weren't? What's his view on leadership? And then the one on the bottom left, George Ford and Farrell, is you've got to try and create some connections where people are going to. So there's no doubt at all that these guys are very good individually, but when you put them together, they're quite amazing. And that's because they're being afforded. It's been deliberate around connecting them. So can you connect people in your squads around developing their skills, their behaviors, but definitely around their leadership? So who we're learning from is really important. And we've all got the capacity and ability in our clubs around peer-to-peer, older to younger, sort of heroes of your club, heroes of the area, just to share their stories and their experiences. And then also give people an opportunity to sort of watch it so they can observe it. And then what we'll do around observation is around start to model some good stuff as well. So yeah, that's it. Juan, why was it?
Mate, I'm gonna throw in a bit of a challenge for you, because I know you like challenges. So I'm gonna bring him on. He's on. We're listening to you. This is a surprise call, like if you were in a TV show with Fletch.
Fletch, could you give me examples of late developers and what you saw in them and other people didn't?
Hey, what's your right, mate? I think you've always got to be mindful around people are going to develop later, and that is not only their physical, but their technical, tactical, their cognitive, their leadership. So you've always got to be open-minded. You've always got to have a mindset around yet. So, you know, at this moment in time, or it's not going well yet, so just be open-minded. Just be really open-minded to people, and people will catch up depending on their experiences, their environment. So yeah, that would be just keep an open mind. Don't be the coach who starts to label people. He's a good leader. She can do this. She can't do that. She can't do that. I mean, we can continue to learn skills. I mean, I learned to juggle, whilst, as you know. So I learned to juggle in my 30s, I think it was. It's a reasonably quite a complex skill. I'm a reasonable juggler now. So just don't have a closed mindset to it.
Fantastic. People are loving the celeb intervention over there from Peter Walton.
Oh, mate, it's a good intervention.
Thanks, Walt. Should we go on to the next one?
Yeah, mate. So this is just around understanding their world. It's the better, depending on, I would imagine that there'll be some form of gap in terms of age, but potentially of this, certainly often is around youth coaching. So it's around just trying to understand. I know there's lots of generalizations in here, but again, the top right is around understanding the teenage brain. So actually what's happening around the development of the brain. So it is different to once they get and their brain is reasonably developed. It is different. Possibly understand some different cultural stuff. So the bottom right hand side around Pacific Islanders. It's definitely something that I learned working with the RFU. So we were fortunate that Dan Leo came in and spoke a lot around their cultural, how they're likely to behave in group settings, likely to behave with each other, likely to behave on a pitch, that what stuff's important. So so really understand all of that, and there's a lot of information out there around the Generation Z. Anybody born after sort of 1995 onwards is sort of lumped in this Generation Z, and although there's lots of generalizations in there, it is something to consider. So understanding them and their world, because what we do tend to do again as coaches is to sort of impose our stuff. So these are my beliefs, these are my values, this is how I think leadership should be done. This is what I think good leadership looks like. I think we need to better understand their world and look through the world through their lens. I think we need to ask them more questions, hang out with them a bit more, see what's important to them. What do they want from us? What would be useful around developing them as leaders? So, yeah, that's why I put that information on, mate.
Fantastic, Fletcher. I'll give you 10 seconds to rehydrate. And for everybody that is watching this, we are going to be posting this on the Sudamerica Coaching YouTube channel, which you're all invited to go and subscribe and enjoy lots of resources. Also, if you follow us through social media, on @SUD Sud Coaching on Twitter and Instagram. You'll be able to find this recording as well. And we're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on. So if you want to come and join us and follow us, that'll be fantastic. Mate, I'm going to bring in Alejandro from Argentina again. And he's got a question for you. Ale, how are you? What's your question for Fletch?
Hello everyone. Hello, Sean. Everyone, we know a good leader inspire people and winning mentality, bring energy to the team and push all around them forward and all the time. But when we have in the group a negative leader, any tips how we find quickly the negative one?
Okay. You get that, John?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great question. So if you're in a situation where you're the leadership or the leader of the team, actually it's not been that helpful. So again, there's a couple of things we've already touched upon it. They're probably not that aware, so their awareness would be that they're behaving in a way that's helpful. So I think giving them some feedback, probably getting some feedback from lots of different places, and then actually presenting that information to them, and then offering some support around, look, how do you think this could be different? So I'm assuming that there's not just you, but there's other people who are thinking actually this behavior from this leader or this leadership is not going well. Probably get them to, and you probably need to marry up what good leadership looks like. So I assume, are thinking, well, good leadership looks like this, and you're thinking, well, I think it looks like that. Then I think you need to play that out. So what does everybody think good leadership is? And then really simple, just give it a score. Just like, well, let's score it. If there's differences of scores, then that's really strong conversation. So if Juan thinks it's an 8 and I think it's a 4, then we need to come together and have a conversation and then actually come up with some stuff that's going to be useful. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I do quite a lot of work in business or some work in business, and sometimes the leaders are the ones who are getting in the way. It's actually their behavior that's the problem. Often when I'm seeing environments that are absolutely smashing it out the park, it's because their leaders and their leadership are modeling the stuff that they've all agreed and they're talking about. So I hope that's been helpful. But yeah, you're going to have some conversations. And you can't let it go, because the more you let a behavior go, the more people think that's an acceptable behavior. So if somebody's behaving in a way and you let it go over a period of time, that to them is just an acceptable behavior. One thing we're not good at is just having conversations around, well, actually, I don't think your behavior is that acceptable. Let's just talk it out. I don't think we're very good at that.
Great, and I think you've just answered Stuart's question as well over there. If there's something pending, Stuart, please let us know through the chat. Should we move on to the next one, Fletch?
Yeah, mate, I think we're on the last one, actually.
We are, yes.
So yeah, this slide was in, I very easily could have put this at the start, because it's about you as a club and or a sport actually identifying what's really important to you. Because once you actually say, well, this stuff's important, then that's how people are going to behave. So the RFU, you would have seen this, the RFU have some skills around creativity, awareness, resilience, decision-making, self-organizing. I've been playing around with these. So the general would be around leadership. So we use this language with our under 12s. So general, wizard, scientist, carer, warrior. So these are the behaviors that we want to see in our medic, warrior. We want to see these behaviors in our players. And we would have conversations about this. So actually, who were our generals today? What sort of stuff did we see about them? Who was a person that was actually behaving like a medic? Who was caring for somebody? The warrior moments. Who was, let's talk about a warrior moment. Oh, well, Juan, I noticed corner flagged and made a tackle in the corner, or whatever it may be. So again, as a club or a school or a team, make sure that people know what's really important to you. And that's currently the stuff that we're working on. The kids, so this is with under 12s. I would probably do it slightly different with adults. But it's working really well. So lots of kids are talking about having good general moments, or scientists, which is around problem solving. Our next step is to set up some trump cards. So we're currently developing them some trump cards based around this framework, so the kids can start to score themselves. So all of them would probably be stronger in certain areas and not as strong. And I think that's also useful information for them to have. So if you could have a trump card where, look, I do really well around the medic and the scientist, but actually I need to work upon the wizard stuff and maybe the general stuff. I think that's good language to use, and it's stuff that we're currently working on within the Magic Academy. And no doubt we'll be working with Juan as well on it, because we work really, really well together with Juan.
Fletch, Sergio's got a question for you, and I'm going to translate it for you. I know your Spanish skills are really good, but just in case, okay?
Go on.
Hola Juan, hola a todos, ¿me escuchas?
Sí, perfecto.
Sí, no, era preguntarle si el líder puede ser líder en un entorno determinado y no ser líder en otro entorno. Hay chicos que son líderes en un lugar del club y en otra parte no, cambian de división y dejan de ser líderes. ¿Cómo le influye en el liderazgo ese entorno? Y si es que en realidad no fueron líderes originalmente, ¿no? Y estuvo mal elegido, estuvo mal desarrollado ese liderazgo.
So Sergio's question, Fletch, is around how the environment can influence a leader. So you've got children that could be leaders on the pitch, but perhaps not outside, or vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely, you can. And there's opportunities to lead on and off the pitch. Some would be stronger on than off. I come back to it, I think you'd give people, be really intentional around where these opportunities are on and off the pitch. Yeah, I mean, I do think you're right. Sometimes the environment on the pitch is better than off the pitch and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important as a club that you actually have these conversations. So I'm doing some work with a number of clubs around just trying to create some stuff around the club that's actually going to make this just sort of normal. It's, conversations that the club's having around developing people on and off the pitch, of which leadership is part of that development. Juan, do you think I've answered that?
Yeah, I think you did. And it's being translated as we speak. We've got anything more on this one, Fletcher? Do you want to move on to the next one and open the room for a few minutes?
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's nothing to add on this. Just, I think it's useful for your club or team to actually look what's the stuff that's most important, and that's what the players will be a bit more intentional about. Developing leadership and giving opportunities to people is absolutely key, but it's also key around giving them feedback as well. I do see lots of people if you get an opportunity. I don't see us giving feedback and sort of playing that out as stuff, and probably people are not strong enough around what they think leadership is.
I'm with you. So that's Fletch email over there if you want to reach out. Would you know the social media handler of from the top of your head, Fletch, or not?
At Magic, I don't know. Just you'll find us on Twitter. If you put in Magic Academy, you'll find us.
He'll come up for sure. We've got a couple of minutes for a couple of questions. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. Ian, you had an interesting reflection here on the chat. I'm going to try to find you. There's many Ians here. Ian Moore, how are you, mate? Where are you? And what's your question for Fletch?
Hold on. Can I hear you?
Yes, you're on, mate.
Yeah, I just want to ask Fletch, would you put developing leaders in your coaching philosophy?
Say again, mate. I didn't catch
Would you put developing leaders in your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, I would develop people, and leadership is a skill that's going to be sort of helpful. Would I be intent? Yeah, it would be. There'd be 2 or 3 things that I would start with when they were younger, and leadership would be one of them that would start right from the get-go. So I think leadership and stuff around communication would be stuff that I'd be doing straight away. Ultimately, I just want to develop good people, and I think leadership would be part of that. I wouldn't probably be that explicit as I got a bit older, because I think we would have done such great work with them when they were younger that it's just expected that people are being given opportunities and getting feedback. And but yeah, I do think the sport needs to be a bit more intentional around the psychological side of the game. I think we're doing great stuff around technical, tactical, and we're playing at it a little bit. And could probably come back to Ian's point, that you had a massive advantage if you've had some experience in this field. If you're either a PE teacher or you've just had some different experiences around the psychological development.
Cool, Fletch. We're just a minute under the hour now. So if there are any burning questions, please put them on the chat. Otherwise, we'll bring this to an end. I want to be respectful of your time, and also Andrea on the translation over there. Any words of wisdoms to close it all up? We got one more question actually from Fabian here. Don't you think us coaches more often than not are doing things that are completely inconsistent to what we say?
Yeah, look, I think, and I'm not trying to give everybody a hard time, because I would be the same. I just think we're getting in the way a bit. I think we need just to give, if it's around leadership, we just need to be giving them some more responsibility, and for us to probably better understand in our world of our club, actually, what does leadership represent? It'll be very similar to the stuff around, influencing people, inspiring people, drawing people. There'd be, most of us come up with some very similar stuff. So for people to best understand what that is, and then give some people opportunities, and then be really skillful around feedback. And with that, I probably didn't stress enough around the environment. We've got to create an environment where it's cool to have a go, and for it not to go well. Often it doesn't go well, and then people sort of shrink a bit. And alongside leadership, you've got to maybe talk about followership as well. So not everybody in every situation can actually lead. People have got to develop some skills around, well, in this situation, Juan's given us some direction and off we go. So I'm actually going to demonstrate some followership type skills as well. Hopefully that's been helpful. I think if there was one last thing as well, is probably for you guys to explore a little bit. It's relatively recently, sort of last year, I've been kind of into this. It's around storytelling. I think good leaders tell good stories. So Sarah Keller sort of brought it to my attention. I've been doing some stuff around it. So maybe explore some storytelling around your development as a leader, and then probably you might want to develop that in others as well around leadership.
Fantastic, Fletch. Thank you so
Juan,
much
are you still there?
For your time. I'm still here. There's lots of questions coming in now, as it usually happens when we draw things to an end. But we're going to wrap it up there. Again, I want to be respectful of people's times. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to leave you to wrap it up as you want, and then I'm going to open all the mics so you can say thank you both to Andrea on the translation and Fletch as well for giving up his time from his house today. So Fletch, over to you. I think we just lost Fletch on those final words. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. It's been fantastic to have you on board. We will be seeing you on Friday again, 11 o'clock in South America, or most countries in South America, 3 p.m. here in the UK, and 4 o'clock in most other countries in Europe. It's been an absolute pleasure. All the mics are open now, so you can say thank you to each other. All the best and see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Bye.